Story 1. The Intercom Test. At 12:58 a.m., the overhead intercom announced a fire drill in a building that wasn't scheduled to have anyone inside. At 12:59, it announced my full name, slowly, like it was reading it off a badge it could see. I worked overnight at a small distribution office attached to a warehouse complex, the kind of job that exists mostly to make insurance companies feel better. My role was simple: keep an eye on cameras, sign in the occasional late courier, and walk the building once an hour with a flashlight and a ring of keys heavy enough to be its own form of exercise. That night was quiet, in the way that makes time feel thick. The day shift had left early because a snowstorm was expected, and the building had the softened, hollow feeling of an empty place that still remembers noise. Fluorescent lights buzzed in the halls. The vending machine hummed. Somewhere in the ceiling, the HVAC breathed in long, slow cycles. At midnight, I did my normal round. Every door was locked. Every bay was sealed. No motion alerts, no deliveries scheduled. I came back to the security office, poured coffee I didn't want, and watched camera feeds that showed nothing moving but the occasional flicker of brightness from a parking lot light. At 12:58, the intercom clicked. It was a crisp, mechanical sound that didn't belong to a random glitch. It sounded deliberate, like a finger pressing a button. Then a voice came through the speakers, calm and official. "Attention! This is a fire drill. Please proceed to the nearest exit." My stomach tightened because the building's announcement system wasn't supposed to run drills at night. There were no managers in the building, no safety officers, and the fire panel hadn't shown any alarms. I grabbed my radio and keyed up. "Security to anyone on site, identify yourself." Only static answered, thick and slow, like the air in the frequency had turned to fog. The intercom continued, still calm. "Do not use elevators. Proceed to the assembly point." I stood, listening, trying to decide whether to pull the fire panel log or head to the floor. If there was a real fire, hesitation was dangerous. If it was a malfunction, running around the building in the dark alone was a different kind of dangerous. Then the intercom clicked again, and the tone changed. The official cadence softened, like it had dropped the performance. "Daniel," it said. I felt cold spill through my chest. I hadn't spoken my name aloud. The office door was closed. There was no one else to overhear. "Daniel," it repeated, slower. "Please proceed to the nearest exit." I didn't move. I stared at the intercom speaker in the ceiling tile above my desk, as if I could force it to explain itself. A third click. "Daniel," the voice said, almost gently. "You can stop pretending you're alone." My mouth went dry. I glanced at the monitor wall. Every camera feed looked normal. Hallways empty, loading bays quiet, the break room still. Yet the feeling in my gut was certain. The building had shifted from empty to occupied without changing what it showed. I took my flashlight and stepped into the corridor, keeping the radio close. The hallway air was colder than the office, and my footsteps returned to me in a delayed echo, as if the building was repeating what I did a half-second behind. The intercom speakers were spaced down the hall like black, watchful eyes. As I walked, they clicked in sequence, one after another, matching my position. "Proceed," the voice said from the speaker nearest me. I stopped. The next speaker clicked. "Proceed," it said again. I tried to anchor myself in logic. Someone could have accessed the system remotely, an IT prank, a misconfigured timer. But none of those explanations accounted for how the speakers seemed to follow me, speaking from the one closest to my head, as if the building knew where I was in real time. I reached the main lobby where the glass doors faced the parking lot. Snow drifted through the light cone of a lamp outside. My car sat alone, dusted white. The world beyond the glass looked peaceful and normal. The intercom clicked in the lobby ceiling. "You can leave," it said in a voice that sounded almost like mine, but not quite. "But then the shift stays open." I turned slowly, scanning the lobby. Nothing moved. No shadows, no reflections that didn't belong. The voice continued, quiet and persuasive. "Someone has to close the building. Someone has to log the alarm. Someone has to finish the round." My radio crackled, and for a moment I thought it was finally picking up a real transmission. Then I heard my own voice on the radio, as if it were playing back a recording. "Everything's fine," it said. "I'm alone." I stared at the radio in my hand, heart pounding. I hadn't recorded anything. I hadn't spoken those words. Behind me, the lobby doors clicked, a soft sound like a lock turning. I spun around. The doors were still shut, but the deadbolt on the frame, an emergency lockdown bolt I rarely used, was sliding into place by itself, sealing me inside. The intercom voice lowered. "Fire drill complete," it said warmly. "Now do the rest of your shift." I forced myself to move, to break the moment, to refuse the building's script. I ran back to the security office, grabbed my keys, and went straight to the breaker panel room. If I could cut power to the intercom amplifier, it would stop. The panel room door was locked. My keyring had the right key. I used it. The lock turned smoothly. The door didn't open. I tried again. The lock turned again, perfectly, like it was happy to cooperate with the motion, but not the result. Then, from behind the door, my own voice whispered through the seam, close and intimate. "Wrong exit," it said. I stepped back, breathing hard, and I realized the building hadn't locked me in with metal and bolts. It had locked me in with routes, with options that pretended to exist. The intercom clicked softly overhead, back in the corridor, patient and calm. "Proceed to the nearest exit," it said again. And at that point, the nearest exit wasn't a door. It was obedience. Story 2. The Empty Office Meeting. At 3:02 a.m., my calendar reminder popped up. Mandatory meeting, conference room B. I didn't put it there. When I tried to dismiss it, it came back with a location tag that read, "Already inside." I was a night cleaner in a downtown office building, the kind that turns corporate by day and cavernous by night. The work was simple and repetitive in a way that can be comforting. Vacuum, wipe, restock, move on. The building's upper floors were leased to different companies, but at night it all blended into the same landscape of glass walls, muted carpets, and conference rooms that looked staged for conversations that never happened. I liked the quiet. I liked the way the city lights outside made reflections in the windows like underwater movement. I liked being the only person who knew what the building looked like when the performance of productivity was over. That night, the elevator dropped me off on the 12th floor, and the doors opened onto a corridor lit by motion sensor lights that clicked on in segments. Every time I walked forward, the next set would brighten, and the set behind would dim, leaving me always standing in a small island of light. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a calendar alert. I frowned because I didn't use my calendar for anything except doctor appointments and bills. Mandatory meeting, conference room B. Under it, starting now. I stared at the screen. The event had no organizer name, no invite list, no notes, just the title. I tapped dismiss. The alert disappeared, then returned immediately, as if the phone had refused to accept my choice. Mandatory meeting, conference room B. This time, the location field was filled in, already inside. A cold, prickling sensation climbed my arms. I glanced down the hallway. The glass-walled conference rooms sat like aquariums, their long tables reflecting the overhead lights. Most were empty, except for chairs and a forgotten marker or two. Conference room B was at the end of the hall, behind a frosted glass door with a simple letter B on it. As I approached, the motion sensor lights flickered, not turning on cleanly, but stuttering as if the building was uncertain about showing me the way. The city outside the windows looked too still, the traffic lights changing for no one. The door to conference room B was slightly open. I stopped with my cart beside me, mop bucket and supplies quiet in the hall. I listened. A low murmur came from inside, like multiple voices talking at once, but too softly to pick out words. The sound was wrong for an empty building. It had the cadence of a meeting, brief pauses, then a rise, then another voice. My phone buzzed again. Meeting in progress. I didn't want to go in. I didn't want to become part of whatever was happening behind that door. But a strange pressure tugged at me, the way you feel when you're late and you know someone is waiting. I pushed the door open. The room was empty. No one at the table, no one in the chairs, no silhouettes behind the glass. But the murmuring continued, filling the air like a layer of fog. It didn't come from any one place. It came from the room itself, as if the walls were reciting a conversation from memory. On the table, neatly centered, was a stack of printed papers. Meeting agenda. My hands went cold. I stepped closer and read the top line. Topic, you. Below it were bullet points, typed in a plain corporate font. Attendance, compliance, replacement, sign off. My throat tightened. I flipped the page. There was a seating chart, a rectangle representing the table, little circles representing chairs, names typed beside them. Most were blank. One chair, the one closest to the door, had my full name typed in, and under it, in smaller letters, minutes taker. My phone buzzed. A new notification. Please sit. The murmuring rose, and for the first time it sounded like it was reacting to me, like a conversation pausing because someone had entered the room. I took one step backward. The door behind me swung gently, nudged by something I didn't see, and closed with a soft click. My chest tightened. I grabbed the handle. It didn't turn. Not locked in the normal sense. The handle moved, but the mechanism didn't catch, like the door had become decorative. The murmuring shifted into something closer to whispering, and within it I began to hear my own voice, repeating phrases I'd said earlier on the night. Ordinary things muttered to myself while working. Almost done, my voice said somewhere in the murmur. Just one more floor. The meeting was built out of me. I stared at the chair with my name. The longer I looked at it, the more it felt inevitable, like a spot reserved in a system. The papers on the table fluttered slightly, though there was no breeze. Then the pen on the table rolled a fraction of an inch toward the chair, coming to rest as if placed there. My phone buzzed one last time. Sign here. A line on the agenda paper had a signature field at the bottom. Employee acknowledgement. I swallowed hard and did the only thing I could think to do that didn't involve signing anything. I lifted my cleaning cart's metal handle and slammed it into the conference room's glass wall. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. The glass didn't break, but the impact made the murmuring stutter, and for a second the room went silent. I hit the glass again, harder. The lights flickered. The murmur returned, harsher now, like angry static. I hit the glass a third time. This time, the door handle behind me turned. The lock released with a click that sounded like someone giving in. I yanked the door open and stumbled into the hallway, dragging my cart behind me.
The motion sensor lights snapped on in a clean line toward the elevator, like the building had decided to cooperate. As the elevator doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of Conference Room B through the narrowing gap. The chairs were still empty, but on the glass wall, where my cart had struck it, a faint smear had appeared, like a palm print. 5 fingers, pressed from the inside. Story 3. The Warehouse Clock-In. My badge didn't work at the loading dock anymore, not after I quit. So when the reader beeped green and the screen welcomed me back by name, I knew the building had kept my credentials for a reason, and it expected me to finish something I never agreed to start. I returned to the old warehouse on a dare I pretended wasn't a dare. A friend of mine still worked for the company and told stories about how the place felt after hours, how the aisles seemed longer at night, how the emergency exit signs would flicker like they were breathing. I laughed along with it because laughing is easier than admitting a building can make you feel watched. But the truth was, I had unfinished feelings about that job. I'd left suddenly after a series of late-night incidents that never amounted to anything concrete, only a slow accumulation of wrongness. Doors that were found unlocked. Cameras that cut out for a minute at the same time every night. A radio channel that sometimes carried a voice repeating the same phrase, as if stuck. I told myself it was faulty equipment. I told myself it was stress. Then I got a new job and stopped thinking about it. Until my friend texted me a photo of the time clock screen at 2 a.m. showing a familiar list of names. My name was on it, not under former employees, not in an archive, on the active roster. Shift 2 to 6. My stomach turned cold. I replied with a joke, but my fingers hesitated over the keys. He sent another message. Come by. Prove it's nothing.
I'll meet you at the dock. I went because pride is stupid, and because a part of me wanted to see for myself whether the building had really kept me. The parking lot was mostly empty when I arrived. The warehouse loomed under harsh exterior lights, its windows dark and reflective. The air smelled like snow and metal, clean and sharp. I didn't see my friend's car, but I assumed he was inside. The loading dock entrance had a badge reader. I still had my old badge in a drawer. I brought it without thinking, the way you bring a charm when you don't believe in charms. I held it up to the reader, expecting the red flash of denial. The reader beeped once. Green. Welcome back. Then my full name appeared on the screen. I stood still, my breath fogging the glass of the door. My mouth went dry. The door clicked, unlocked. I stepped inside. The interior was dim, lit by emergency lights and a few overhead fixtures in the main aisle. The warehouse smelled like cardboard and dust and the faint sweetness of packing tape. The silence felt heavy, but not empty, more like a room full of people holding their breath. I called my friend's name softly. No answer. I walked toward the time clock station near the supervisor's office. The screen glowed in the dark, a bright rectangle like an altar. A list of names scrolled slowly. At the top was mine, highlighted. It looked like the system had been waiting for me to arrive. A prompt appeared. Please clock in. My hands shook. I told myself it was a glitch, a leftover record. But then the screen changed, showing a message that made my stomach drop. Absence recorded. 712 days. Below it, makeup shift required. I laughed once, sharp and involuntary. "That's not real," I whispered. The intercom in the ceiling clicked. My own voice answered from the speaker, calm and close. "It's real," it said. "You just forgot to finish." My skin went cold. I stared up at the speaker, then back at the clock screen. Another prompt. "Sign acknowledgement." A digital signature box appeared. The intercom clicked again and my voice continued, softer. "Clock in," it said. "Then you can clock out." I backed away from the screen, heart hammering. The warehouse aisles stretched into darkness, long rows of shelves like corridors in a maze. Somewhere deep inside, a forklift's warning beep sounded once, distant and muffled. Then again, closer. I spun toward the sound. There was no forklift on nights anymore, not in this building. Yet the beep repeated, approaching down an aisle as if something large was reversing toward me. The intercom clicked, patient. "You're already scheduled," my voice said. "Don't make it difficult." I forced myself to move, not deeper into the warehouse, but toward the exit. I walked fast, resisting the urge to run, because running would mean fear, and fear would mean agreement. The forklift beep continued, steady and deliberate, keeping time behind me. When I reached the dock door, I hit the push bar. Nothing happened. The door did not open. The badge reader beside it glowed softly. "Clock out required." My throat tightened. I looked back into the warehouse. The beep had stopped. The silence was worse. The intercom clicked one last time, and my own voice spoke with tired disappointment. "You can't leave without clocking out," it said. "You know that." I stared at the reader, then at my badge in my trembling hand. I made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. I snapped the badge in half. The plastic cracked loudly in the quiet, and the sound seemed to ripple through the building. The lights flickered. The time clock screen flashed white. For one moment, the warehouse felt empty again, like the spell had been interrupted. The dock door clicked, unlocked. I shoved it open and stumbled into the freezing night air, breathing hard as if I'd been underwater. In the parking lot, my phone buzzed with a notification from an email address I didn't recognize. Subject: shift confirmation. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Because behind the warehouse's dark windows, deep inside where the aisles began, I saw a small green light blink once, like a badge reader acknowledging someone else. And in the quiet outside, carried by the wind, I heard a faint intercom click, followed by my own voice whispering from somewhere I couldn't locate. "See you tomorrow."